Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to our information session about medical radiation technologist careers provided by the Canadian Association of Medical Radiation Technologists. I'm Julia Leary, a career advisor with the University of Guelph, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we all call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. We have an incredibly interesting presentation ahead of us today. We have the pleasure of presenting to you a panel of medical radiation technologists, each representing one of the four major disciplines within the MRT profession. We also have Jennifer Carey, who is the CAMRT's Provincial Manager for Atlantic Canada, to give a brief introduction about the MRT profession and share some key info on how to become a medical radiation technologist should you decide that this is the right career path for you. Let's just have each panelist introduce themselves by stating their name, their current role, and where they're joining us from today. Nicole, we'll start with you.
Hi, so my name is Nicole. I am the General Radiography Assistant Team Lead at MedRay Imaging, as well as a Diagnostic Mammography Technologist at Royal Columbian Hospital. So I'm a Radiological Technologist, and I'm joining in today from Langley, BC.
Thank you, welcome. Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I am an MRI technologist. I work at the Janeway Children's Hospital in St. John's, Newfoundland, and I'm joining from St. John's.
Wonderful. Haley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Haley. I am a nuclear medicine technologist that works at Abbotsford Regional Hospital, and I'm also a nuclear medicine instructor at BCIT, which is where I am zooming in from today.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Adam.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Adam McDonald. I am a licensed radiation therapist, and I currently am working at the Nova Scotia Cancer Centre at the Victoria General Hospital in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I'll tell you more about it later, but I recently went back to school to do what Sarah Reed there is doing, so for MRI.
Wonderful. Before I hand it over to Jennifer, I have a few quick housekeeping items. The presentation will be approximately 30 to 40 minutes, and following the presentation, the panelists will be available for a live question and answer session. At any point in the presentation, if you have questions for the presenters, please type them into the question box located on the right-hand side of your screen. Your questions will be answered at the end of the presentation during the question and answer period. We will have about 20 to 30 minutes for questions, so the total time of the session today will be 1 hour. If during the webinar you experience any trouble with your audio or video, we suggest you try the following. Check to make sure your volume is turned up and you have the correct audio source selected. Try refreshing your browser or move to a different browser. You can also try logging out of the webinar and logging back in. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer, and I will see you shortly for the Q&A at the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Julia. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Carey, and as Julia said, I am the manager of CAMRT Atlantic. So I provide, or I help provide, the association services for the 4 Atlantic provinces. And I am coming to you from Moncton, New Brunswick today. So I just wanted to go over some of the objectives. Why are we here telling you about this amazing profession? So some of the objectives of this session are to explain to you, what is medical radiation technology, and to describe the 4 disciplines within this profession, to have a better understanding of the role of MRTs and the healthcare team. I sometimes think that, media and stuff makes us believe that that the only people that work in hospitals perhaps are physicians and nurses, but there's so many other healthcare professions, and we are one of them. To gain insight into the day-to-day practice, because sometimes when you're considering a future career, you want to know what it is like to do the day-to-day tasks of the job. And then finally, describe the educational and practice requirements for MRTs in Canada. So what do you have to do in terms of education? What happens after you graduate? Things like that. So medical radiation technologists, or MRTs, as you are going to hear us refer to them kind of from now on, are healthcare professionals who perform medical imaging and radiation therapy. So if you have been into, or a family member has been in for an X-ray, or maybe has had an MRI, or perhaps has had a bone scan or a PET scan, or maybe has received radiation therapy, then you have interacted with an MRT. We practice in a lot of different areas, mostly in hospitals, sometimes in clinics, academic institutions, and cancer centers. And we contribute on a huge level to the diagnosis and treatment of millions of patients each and every year. So within our profession of medical radiation technology, we have 4 disciplines. So there is radiological technology, so things like X-ray, CT scans, mammography, things like that. We have magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. So if you've ever, or someone you know has had to have an MRI of their brain or their knee or of their spine. We have radiation therapy. That is a huge contributor to cancer care across the country. That is one of the treatments that a cancer patient may have to go through during their journey. And finally, nuclear medicine. So if you've had a PET scan or a bone scan, you would have been treated by an MRT within the nuclear medicine discipline. So all 4 of those disciplines encompass the medical radiation technology profession. They are distinct, and they have distinct educational programs, as we'll get into later, but we are all one profession. So like I said, there are some things we have in common, and even despite our distinct roles. So we have daily contact with patients. We work in a lot of interprofessional teams. So we work with physicians and nurses and respiratory therapists and laboratory technologists and a lot of other professions within a hospital. One of the amazing things, I'm an MRT myself, and one of the amazing things I love about this profession is you are continuously learning and adapting. Technology is constantly advancing. How we care for our patients is constantly changing. And the healthcare system is always moving. And so it is really exciting to be part of a profession that doesn't stay the same. It changes and it evolves, and it's really exciting to be able to change with it. So to help you gain a better understanding of what it's like in the profession, we are going to hear stories from MRTs in all 4 of those disciplines, and they're going to share some personal stories with you that they've experienced over the course of their career. They're going to share with you some of the best parts about what it is to be a medical radiation technologist, but they're also going to talk to you about some of the difficult parts too, because it's not always amazing all the time. And we want you guys as prospective students to understand kind of the bonuses and the good days, but also to understand what some of the bad days may look like as well. So without further ado, we are going to start off with Nicole, and she is going to share what it is like in the day in the life of a radiological technologist.
Thank you, Jen. So thank you all for joining us today to talk about the MRT profession. So again, my name is Nicole, and I'm a radiological technologist. So a little bit of background about me and my career. So I graduated from the BCIT MRT program in spring of 2010. And through the years, I've worked through a variety of hospital and clinic sites, as well as multiple modalities. So general X-ray, interventional imaging, bone densitometry, and screening and diagnostic mammography. First and foremost, the thing that attracted me to the medical imaging field was the ability to help people, ability to be an essential part of their healthcare journey. The next was to be in a career, kind of like Jen just said, that mixes technology and patient care and is always changing and evolving. To get to be on my feet working with both patients and imaging equipment, and to be constantly challenged with every patient that comes in the door. So we get to mix physics and anatomy and technology with patient care. We get to be creative and have the ability to visualize what our images will look like and how different parts of the body will be affected by the exposures before even taking the image. Every day you are challenged to think outside the box in order to achieve optimal imaging for your patients. And every day you leave knowing that the work you do is going to help, improve, or save the lives of your patients. So most of you probably relate X-ray with button pushers, broken bones, radiation, and that is a very small part of what we do. But we are so much more. We are hands-on in breast imaging examinations. We run CT scanners, fluoroscopy equipment. We assist radiologists in interventional procedures and surgeons in the OR. We work in hospitals, clinics, mobile vans, busy hospital centers, quiet rural clinics. So ultimately, our work as technologists is that essential link between the patient and their diagnosis. So for me personally, very early in my career, I was attracted to working in the breast imaging field. And that is kind of where my passion has laid for the last 12 plus years. So in breast imaging, we perform screening mammography, where we screen asymptomatic patients. And this imaging is essential for both finding patients cancer early, as well as educating patients about their breast health. And in diagnostic mammography, that's where we image patients for follow-ups, patients who have concerns, previous breast cancer patients, as well as working with radiologists to perform these sterile interventional breast procedures. So 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer. This is something that we hear a lot in the media and the news. And so every patient that walks into our door every day quite literally puts their body and their future breast health in our hands. So a cancer can live in just 1 centimeter of breast tissue. And so these radiologists are relying on us to get every single last bit of tissue on an image so that we can find a cancer at its earliest stage. So we treat every patient like they are going to be that 1 of 8. We educate them on best practices, treat them with kindness and respect to ensure their comfort, and just go over and above to ensure that they are getting the most quality imaging possible. And through imaging, we're able to find cancers years before they can even get felt. And it is our responsibility to ensure that the patient receives this best imaging possible. So I just wanted to share a quick personal story with you that encompasses both the hardest and the best part of being a mammographer. It's going to tie them both together. So it was actually one of my first weeks working as a diagnostic mammographer, fully solo. And I had a patient come in her early 30s for a routine mammogram. This patient's mom was diagnosed with breast cancer very early, so she was educated to start her own personal mammography at an earlier stage for screening. Upon her imaging, I found something just in the very, very corner of one of her images, barely even making it on the picture. And upon further imaging as well as an ultrasound, we did conclude that this patient did have cancer. So with a smile on my face, I had to walk back into that room knowing that this patient's life was going to completely change in the next day or two. Say, have a great day, your doctor will get the results, and carry on. I then walked back into our tech area and just completely broke down crying. What we do as in the mammography exam is a very, very personal examination. It requires a patient to be naked from the waist up and allow a technologist who is technically a stranger to manipulate and compress their breast in various positions. It is super important for our patients to be calm and relaxed for this procedure so that we can get optimal imaging. So as technologists, we are experts at getting these patients to trust and respect us within minutes or even seconds of them entering a room. And because of this, we do form pretty strong bonds with our patients very quickly. Having this be the first cancer that I had found, I was devastated for her and her family. Then I had a senior technologist come up to me and kind of give me a different perspective. So because this patient was properly educated, she came in today. Because I treated her with kindness and respect, she was relaxed for her exam and I was able to get optimal imaging. Because I ensured every single last bit of tissue was on the image, I found her cancer. So yes, this patient was going to get some devastating news and she was going to have this journey, probably included surgery and treatment ahead of her, but she's going to survive, and she was going to survive because I found her cancer today. And this moment is a moment that I come back to almost every day as a technologist, and I remember with every patient coming in my room. And it was pivotal for me knowing that I was in the right profession. It is such an honor to have patients place this level of trust in me and allow me to be such an important part of their health journey. And yes, some days and some cases are very challenging, both mentally and physically. But there's not a day go by where I am not extremely proud to have a skill set that at the end of the day saves the lives of so many patients. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That's a great story. And, you know, like you said, both takes into consideration the hard parts and the really rewarding parts too. I think next we have Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I hope you all can hear me. So thank you so much for joining us today. Like Jen introduced me, my name is Sarah, and I am an MRT. So I hold certification in both medical radiological technology and in MRI, or medical resonance imaging. So I am certified in both, but I am currently working as an MRI tech, so that's how I'll be focusing my conversation on today. So I can actually remember the exact moment that I decided I wanted to be an MRI technologist. It was actually when I was in my clinical year of my X-ray education, and we had started to tour the other modalities. And that is something that's extremely great about MRTs. You can further your education and move into one of the other modalities. I think Adam mentioned that he's also studying MRI now, so that is a really fun aspect. But we were touring MRI, and I remember I was just struck silent by how detailed the images on the brain were. And if you knew me, you'd understand that anything striking me silent is insane, because I never stop talking. But I just was in awe of the detail they were able to get. It's 11 years later, and now I'm the technologist who's scanning patients and able to get those detailed images to help with their diagnosis that the physicians can use. So I work at a children's hospital on a 1.5 Tesla scanner. So pediatric patients are our priority at my hospital. But of course, we don't have enough peds, so that's all we do. So we fill our schedule with adult patients as well. We're also attached to the trauma hospital in our province, and they have a 3 Tesla scanner. So because their scanner is stronger, sometimes their inpatients are not able to be scanned on the stronger magnet and will have to come to us over at the children's hospital to be scanned. This could be because they have a device or they've had orthopedic hardware implanted that means that the image distortion would just be too great on the stronger magnet. So all of this means that we have a very eclectic mix of patients on our schedule from day to day, and I love it. So it's really kept up my patient care skills. I'm able to go from talking to a child about their favorite Paw Patrol pup and what they're doing in school, to talk to Nan about her medical history and help her remember everything that she's gone through in her life so that we can know she's safe to scan, to then have an ICU patient who's intubated, and I would have to really pull on my skills to make sure that that patient is safe to scan. So I will say honestly that our adult patients kind of prefer the pediatric treatment, as we call it. We're often wearing quite bright, colorful clothing. We're pretty cheery, and we'll hold their hand through the procedure. That kind of brings me into what I consider the most rewarding part of my day, and that's that us as MRTs really make a difference. And I feel we often need that reminder, especially on our difficult days. It's easy to forget that we are such a vital part of the healthcare team. We're that empathetic touch that the patients are able to use in a time that they're probably very stressed out. If you've ever watched a family member or a friend go through a health scare, or if you've even gone through one yourself, you'll understand that quite often you do become very overwhelmed very quickly with the information that's coming at you. And one more test is just a test too many. You just don't want to do it. So that's where we come in, especially in MRI. When a patient comes to us, they're usually pretty anxious. Some are claustrophobic. They may not know anything at all about MRI, and they're here for this big scary test. So we're able to be that calming presence for them, answer their questions in an informative manner, and at the end of the day, get them through the test so that the doctors can get diagnostic images to help treat them. That's something that I take a lot of personal reward in. And if you're someone who also takes joy in helping patients, then it might be a good career for you. But of course, no career is perfect. So I do think the most difficult part of MRI is safety concerns. I did mention that I worked on the 1.5 Tesla, but I've also scanned on the 3 Tesla at the trauma center. So just to put that into perspective regarding the strength of the magnet, your average fridge magnet is around 0.01 Tesla. So that means that 3 Tesla scanner is 300 times stronger than a fridge magnet. That's 60,000 times stronger than the Earth's magnetic field. So when you add in that the magnet is always on, safety is a very big concern. So at the end of the shift, we lock the door, we shut down the system, but that magnet is on. So that's something that kind of always plays on your mind when you're working in MRI. We have to remain vigilant at all times to ensure nothing enters the scan room that we have not personally vetted as technologists. That includes people, like our patients and other staff members. Any magnetic object left on your person can become a projectile if it enters the scan room, like a paperclip that you may have forgotten to take out of your pocket. So we usually come at all our patients and staff members with a ferromagnetic detector. I think we kind of get on their nerves sometimes, but hey, safety is more important. And in our patients themselves, if they have any devices or implanted medical devices, we have to make sure that they're safe to scan. Sometimes they can only be scanned on a certain strength magnet, or they have to be scanned with a certain amount of energy. So that's something we do behind the scenes when we're vetting these patients and making sure that they're safe to go in. But ultimately, I do really enjoy my career, and I'm very glad with the path that I've taken. And I hope I was able to give some insight into being an MRI tech, and maybe one day some of you guys would join me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing that. And yeah, yet another different aspect of medical radiation technology. So up next, we have Haley.
Hello, everyone. So I am a nuclear medicine technologist, and I'm going to share a little bit about kind of my journey to becoming a nuclear medicine technologist. I get asked all the time, what the heck is nuclear medicine? People often have not heard of this discipline, and honestly, I hadn't either when I graduated from high school. So I attended the University of British Columbia just in a general science program. I did obtain a Bachelor of Science degree, and when I tried to go get a job, I did not have a lot of skills to do that. I had, some lab skills, and I had a lot of theory on, different scientific principles, but it really did not get me a job. So I started working as a clerical receptionist at the BC Cancer Agency, and I sort of started digging into what different professions were there, what were some career options. I would see different reports kind of coming through my desk of CTs and X-rays, and I had heard of, ultrasounds and all those types of imaging. And then a PET scan report came across my desk, and I thought it was about an animal. Like, I thought it was to do with pets, but it was not. And then I saw another one come through that said nuclear medicine report, and it was a bone scan, and I had never heard of that. So I started doing some research online, started Googling things and figuring out what the heck is this nuclear medicine stuff. And I came across the BCIT program. It was a 2-year program, so I figured, I just did a 4-year degree, and that went pretty quick. I decided 2 years was going to be not too big of a time commitment to kind of get me into a career. And the BCIT website had a lot of information about like their hiring statistics, which was quite important to me at the time because I had been in school for a long time, not making any money. And I'll be honest, like I wanted to come out of my education and get a job. So again, I did kind of all this research, and I actually reached out to the Abbotsford Hospital Nuclear Medicine Department. That's where I was living. And I was able to get a tour, which was awesome. So I was able to ask the technologist questions, kind of like what we're doing here today. And I was able to see the equipment that they use. I had never seen a gamma camera before in my life, so that was mind blowing. And basically everyone that I talked to in nuclear medicine that was in that department, they just really seemed to love their job. And I was like, I want to be that person that loves my job. Thankfully now I am. So to kind of give you a little bit more info on what nuclear medicine is, I sort of describe it as a reverse X-ray. So instead of a machine emitting radiation and going through the patient, as a nuclear medicine technologist, we administer the radiation into the patient, either through an injection or through inhalation or ingestion. So yes, sometimes they eat it. And it will follow a specific path. And we're able to take images of where it goes, how it accumulates, how it empties, if it washes out normally or abnormally. And these radioactive tracers we also prepare. So there's kind of a lot of laboratory work and some chemistry and lab skills, but there's also all of the people skills, because I will tell you, not a lot of people are okay with you just putting radiation inside of them. They don't want to eat it. They don't want it injected. You really have to have that trust with that patient, and you have to develop that rapport before they're willing to give consent for some of our exams. So kind of a typical day in the life, the first sort of steps for the department in the morning are preparing our radioactive tracers. So we actually make them in the morning in the radio pharmacy. And we also have to run quality control on these tracers to make sure that they're of a good radiochemical purity before we would administer them to the patient. So again, like I said, there's a bit of kind of chemistry and some quality control. We also get our cameras up and running, which again requires quality control. So there's a lot of kind of procedures that we learn about. And a different kind of aspect of our profession as well is the element of decay. So with radiation, not to get too technical here, but it decays over time. So each morning we have to prepare the tracers. You can't just use the stuff from yesterday. Every morning you're preparing it fresh. So I found a lot of benefits in this career. Basically, a lot of nuclear medicine departments, because of this element of decay, they do typically run like a Monday to Friday daytime hours. The technologists that I spoke with at Abbotsford said they don't really do graveyard shifts, which was kind of a big plus for me in terms of choosing a career. I did want a more regular schedule. As someone that had worked a graveyard job in the past, I didn't enjoy that. And I just love the diversity in this job. So there's so many different types of tests and different types of therapies that are happening in nuclear medicine. It's not the same scan for every patient. So depending on the tracer that we're using, we can target almost any organ system in the body. So we can look at the brain and how it's functioning. We can look at the lungs and how they're functioning. We can look at the kidneys, the stomach, the bones. There's basically a tracer for every different organ system. There's a lot of diversity. I didn't really want to have a job where it was super repetitive and I was doing the exact same thing all day, every day. So I really enjoy that element of my job. And I found too, just even within that department that I shadowed, there were different types of shifts. So some of the shifts, you were in the radio pharmacy, you were doing your lab skills. Other shifts, you were, more fast paced. You were in the cardiology lab with a patient running on the treadmill, injecting them with a radioactive tracer. That just, again, it just blew my mind. I had never heard of this type of imaging before. And I really just fell in love. The more that I've kind of dove into my career in the last few years, I've seen how much research there is happening in our field now as well. So not only are we diagnosing, but kind of like our radiation therapists, we're now treating patients as well by delivering these radioactive therapies. So there's a huge amount of research happening in our field, which is really exciting. In terms of the most difficult parts, I will say that any job in healthcare is going to have those stressful days, those difficult patients that are going through, a health scare. They're very stressed and anxious, and it can take an emotional toll, I will say. But I think kind of what Nicole and Sarah have mentioned, like focusing on that positive, that you're helping these people. You're making them have a smile on their face while they're going through something scary. And if you can bring that sort of positive mindset to their situation, it can really make a huge difference for them. And one other thing that I get asked a lot about is the radiation exposure that we're exposed to as a technologist. And I can tell you that it is very safe. We do have levels that are monitored. So we wear different dosimeters that monitor how much radiation we're being exposed to. And they get monitored every few months to make sure that we're at a super safe level and that there's no kind of issues with that down the road. Yeah, I think that was everything I wanted to talk about. I look forward to answering some of your questions later, hopefully.
Great. Thank you so much, Haley, for explaining to us, yes, the often mystified discipline of nuclear medicine that maybe isn't as much well known in media sources as others. So thank you so much for that. And next, we have Adam, who's going to talk about being a radiation therapist.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks for joining in. So I'll try not to repeat many of the things that you've already heard so far. So I was first introduced to medical radiation technology as a career by my high school guidance counselor. The idea of getting into healthcare really did appeal to me, but other than being a nurse or a doctor, I really wasn't certain of what my options were if I wanted to have a meaningful and what I would define as a successful career. So I was presented with medical radiation technology and particularly radiation therapy as a good fit for myself because of my guidance counselor's understanding of my affinity for science and technology, as well as my desire to work directly with the public and have contact with patients. So I took to radiation therapy like a duck to water. The study of cancer biology, radiation biology, and the disease process was absolutely fascinating. And typically as a radiation therapist, our duties involve educating the patients about their treatments and diagnoses, taking x-rays of the patients that assist with the actual delivery of the treatment, and then of course, delivering the radiation treatments. So I began my undergraduate degree in health sciences and radiation therapy in 2004 and graduated with top marks in New Brunswick in 2007. And my career was really taking off. Within about 5 years, I got involved with education at the university level and became a program coordinator of the program that I actually graduated from 5 years into my career. At the University of New Brunswick. Ultimately, though, my heart stayed with the patients. So I tried out being an administrator for 5 years and went back to being a clinician. So now, 15 years into my career, I've since specialized in surgical brachytherapy or internal radiation treatments, CT scanning, and planning and delivery of the actual treatments. And like Sarah talked about, and I mentioned earlier, I also interestingly went back to school 15 years into my career to do MRI because it's fascinating and there's an increasing utilization of MRI specifically in radiation therapy and cancer centers. So, you know, really, as you pursue a future in medical radiation technology, you do still have opportunities to continue to learn and expand your expertise throughout your career. So the thing that I love most about being a radiation therapist really is the people that I get to meet along the way, the chance to work with some really fascinating technology. The people really help you appreciate the work that you're doing. Patients I get to interact with sometimes for weeks and weeks, day after day, and we really develop a meaningful relationship. We get to know them, their families, their struggles, and we celebrate their successes. And I know I'm a bit biased, but I really can't think of a patient population who is more honestly appreciative of our work than patients undergoing cancer treatments. So the profession in radiation therapy in Canada is really driven by technological advances. And we work with very sophisticated machinery that deliver huge doses of radiation as treatment with sub-millimeter or less than a millimeter of accuracy. So it's like the equivalent of a scalpel going in, but with radiation. And as radiation therapists, we're involved in the imaging, scanning, we design the actual treatment plans. That's what I'm doing in that funny picture that I took from my Instagram. The actual delivery of the treatment, and we're involved in research for the development of new treatments that help people here in Canada. And as a student, kind of bringing this all together, one of my most memorable experiences that I had with a patient happened when, of course, working with highly technical machinery, they break down. And when they break down, everything comes to a screeching halt. This just happens. And we had a patient on the table. We were trying to troubleshoot the problem while the patient was still there on the table. We were trying not to discontinue or stop their treatment. And we've heard it all before. Someone was going over the intercom saying, "Oh, we're just restarting the computer. Just one more time, just lay there, stay calm." And I decided that as a student, I really was not contributing much to that situation. If anything, it would probably be more helpful for me to step aside. So I went inside the room with the patient and stayed with them while they waited. Just idle chat, reassuring them that they would be okay. We talked about the weather. And then years later, on my graduation, my program instructor read out loud a handwritten note by this patient who remembered how important it was that I came in the room and reassured them and got them through that process. And it's little wins like that that really make what you do worthwhile. And something that I've struggled with throughout my career is that sometimes what you're going to do is not going to fix the patient. It's not going to fix the problem. It's not going to cure them. People who are drawn into these career paths, sometimes, we would self-identify as a fixer, and we want to help people, but you can't always fix them. So working with people who have a terminal diagnosis, of course, can be very emotionally draining because we work in a very empathic career. We strive to make real and personal connections with our patients because it enhances their experience. Everyone is someone's loved one, a mother or father, a child, a best friend, a relative, and making their experience in the hospital reflective of how important they are to someone can really take a lot out of you. Some days you are so energized, you're so excited, and others you feel like you don't have anything left to give. The radiation therapy departments where I've worked really help with this though, and I would imagine all other MRT departments. You're surrounded with respected colleagues who have similar life experience. They share this burden. They understand the struggles that you're going through. And some of them even have a wealth of experience to help you cope and survive, and I would say thrive in spite of these challenges. So I kind of finish off, with a statement that, every career that you face is fraught with challenges, and something that I would challenge each and every one of you and all of my colleagues to aspire to is to find a way to make joy in some of those struggles. And what we get to do as MRTs and what I get to do as a radiation therapist really, truly makes a difference in people's lives. So thank you. I'm looking forward to any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Adam, for just eloquently highlighting the highs and lows, especially within the context of cancer care. So thank you so much. So you may be asking yourself, well, this sounds really cool. I haven't heard about this before. This sounds really intriguing. How do I become an MRT? So there are a couple of steps. So you have to go to an accredited MRT education program, and we're going to get into what some of those are in a second. Once you go through your education program, there is a national certification exam. So it's an exam that every student in a medical radiation technology program has to take and pass in order to work in Canada. And then depending on the province you're living in or the province you want to work in, you may have to register with a regulatory body, which is an organization that provides licenses for you to practice within that province. So when it comes to education, so to become an MRT, you have to complete an education program at a college or a university that offers those programs. So there is a link right there on your screen, cmrt.ca/MRT career, which will bring you to a website that lists every educational institution in Canada that offers an MRT program. It'll tell you what discipline that particular school offers. So if you, through the presentation, thought, oh, nuclear medicine sounds really cool, or oh, I really want to go into radiation therapy, it'll show you, and there are direct links to those educational institutions. So please check those out if you are interested in pursuing that and finding out what it is specifically you need for every education program. I'm not going to go into detail of it, but there is a certification exam at the end of your education that you have to pass in order to practice. Like I said, it's one that every student has to pass in order to practice in Canada. And there is a separate exam for each discipline. And then registration. So there are certain provinces that are highlighted here where our profession is regulated, which means you need a license in order to practice within a hospital or clinic context. So depending on what province you're in, you may have to do a little bit of extra research to find out kind of what is entailed in getting a practice license. But it is definitely achievable in any province that you live in or want to practice in. So one of the things that I think all of our panelists touched on that is that, you know, there are opportunities for career advancement. So we are a profession, and what that means is that there are, you belong to a family of other practitioners that know exactly kind of what you're going through and what this profession is like. And so there are national and professional associations. So those are organizations that provide services to you as an MRT. There's tons of career advancement, as our panelists said, different ways that they have gone throughout the profession and different roles they fulfilled. And there's lots of volunteer opportunities within the profession. So if it's something that you really want to, if you're looking for something that is not just a job that you kind of punch in and punch out every day, that you want to become involved with and that you want to show pride in, then there's tons of way for you to be able to do that within this profession. So thank you very much for listening. We're going to turn it over to Julia, who is going to moderate and ask us all of the burning questions you guys have about the profession, how to become an MRT, and if you have any specific questions for any of the panelists, they would be more than willing, they would love to be able to answer those for you.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for your really personal and in-depth looks into your different areas of expertise. There have been questions popping up in the chat all throughout your presentations, and I'll start working through those now. Wondering if you can each comment on your work-life balance. So maybe, you know, telling us a little bit about where you work and how that impacts the hours and the shifts that you work and what your work-life balance is like. Nicole, we'll start with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, so as we kind of talked about, there's many modalities and places you can work as a X-ray CT mammography technologist. So really your work-life balance can be whatever you want it to be, which is pretty amazing. If you work in a hospital, there are daytime, afternoon, night shifts, call, depending where you are. You can choose to be casual or permanent with that, so you can work a variety of shifts. Clinics themselves are more so a daytime shift, Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday. So those are more if you want kind of a different pace and more scheduled hours. For me personally, working in mammography is only daytime, so that is not something that's done evenings or weekends. So kind of that 7:30 to 3:30, 8 to 4, pretty consistent scheduled patients. Whereas if you are working in modalities such as CT scanning, general X-ray, OR, cath lab, things like that, you're more so on the fly. So you'll have some booked patients, but of course there's ICU, inpatients, emergency patients. So your day is a little bit less predictable and can get a little busy, but it is good. So I'd say that's one of the amazing things of kind of the radiological technology profession is that if you want to work nights and calls and all that, you can. If you only want to work days, you also can. So it's really flexible to your schedule and your needs.
That's great. Sarah, we'll go to you.
So in my province with MRI, there's day shifts and evening shifts, and you just rotate back and forth. I personally like that because if you need to make a doctor's appointment, you just make it on the week that you're on evenings. We do call, but we balance between the trauma center that we're attached to and us. So it's only 1 week in 7, which is really nice. I find it really good. I worked as an X-ray tech for many years. I feel the work-life balance is pretty good in MRI. Like Nicole mentioned, when you're in X-ray, it's kind of everything and anything you could have to work. In MRI, you rarely do weekends unless, you know, our patient load is getting too long and they want us to do some overtime. So just Monday to Friday. It's pretty good.
Great. Over to you, Haley.
Yeah, I would say the work-life balance is pretty awesome with being an MRT. I won't go in, like, I already kind of talked a little bit about the shifts for nuke med, so I won't take up too much more time.
Thanks, and Adam.
So yeah, in Canada, most radiation therapists really work in large cancer centers, and they kind of follow similar schedules to the physicians that we work with. So it's like mostly Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 type business hours. Some cancer centers work later into the evenings. Sometimes we would do like emergency on-call stuff, just for very highly specialized things. But for the most part, we have a really great opportunity to balance work life. Very rarely would you see a radiation therapist in Canada doing like shift work with 12-hour shifts. So it's mostly like 8-hour shifts.
Okay, good to know. I think when lots of people hear that you work in a hospital, I think there's that assumption that you're, you know, working all kinds of shifts, all hours of the day. So it's nice to hear that there are opportunities to have that kind of more regular schedule if that's something that appeals to you, and it doesn't to everybody. There's also a question in the chat. It was directed at Haley, but I think it would be interesting to hear all of you answer. How did you find the pathway to your career? How did you decide that this was the career for you? Maybe you can hit on some of the experiences you've had, or people that you spoke to, or resources that you found useful when you were at that stage many of these students are at right now, where they're trying to figure out what's next for them. And we'll just follow that same order again, if that's okay.
So I was really lucky that I found this profession when I was in grade 11. And I actually was able to work at a medical imaging clinic, actually the one that I work at now, ironically. And so I worked there as support staff and did shadowing as actually a work experience course through my school. So I did get credits for it. And through that, I was able to work with technologists, see what they actually do, have that level of understanding, get to know the technology. And I think actually going in and observing it makes such a bigger difference than reading it on paper or having someone kind of just tell you about it, because when you're truly immersed in it, you can really, you know, it encompasses the profession as a whole. So it's not just patient care, it's not just technology. There's so much more to it. Seeing the actual images, the techniques we set, the interactions we have with patients. So I'd say if you are kind of thinking of going in a field, I know most hospitals, clinics, and centers, they do offer programs where you can go in and do kind of an observation day, and you can figure out pretty quick if that modality or that profession is something that excites you or something that you feel that you would be a good fit for.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, so I locked into finding X-ray when I started. My friend actually found it. I was a bit older, I was in my early 20s, but my friend found it. She mentioned it to me, and I was like, that sounds pretty cool. So I applied, not really knowing anything at all about the career, and luckily enough, loved it from the first moment. And then, as I mentioned in my talk, the first moment I seen an MRI scan, I just knew that was where I was going to end up eventually. So that's pretty much it for me. I do kind of still go back and forth. I like both, but I'm hoping to move permanently into MRI very soon.
Haley, any different experiences for you?
Yeah, fairly similar. I was going to say shadowing, like really just sort of was the light bulb moment for me because I could actually, like the day to day, I could see myself in that person's shoes doing that role. Um, so I would say, yeah, if you have the opportunity to shadow, that's a super good way to tell if you're going to actually enjoy that career before you invest all the time and money of attending a program.
And the programs likewise want to know that they're accepting students who are really sure to, right? They want to fill those seats with people that know that this is the right pathway for them. So it's important in your applications for you to be able to demonstrate that as well. So it really works out both ways, I think. That's a good point. Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, so like I mean, I alluded a little bit to what my experience was in my section there, but one thing I would comment is that like most programs are centered in large educational institutions in Canada, and opportunities like this obviously are great for finding out about your potential interests, but they're also a great way to learn about programs that you're not aware of. So reaching out to your faculty advisors or guidance counselors looking at programs. YouTube, as much as you know, you can find garbage on there, can sometimes have really great things from educated programs or professionals offering real world information, or sometimes even like patients wearing a GoPro camera on their head, recording what their lived experience is like, can really give you some opportunities to see what it looks like for you. So, you know, just kind of poke around, throw it into Google and see what you come across.
I was going to really quickly add,
Yeah.
kind of on the YouTube route, social media as well. So I know that the nuclear medicine program at BCIT has an Instagram account. There's a lot of behind the scenes like videos and stuff on there. So if you're interested, you can take a look on there. I know the medical radiography program at BCIT, for example, also has an Instagram account. So you can kind of search up some things on there and you can see kind of the student experience as well.
Yeah, great tips. We've had a few questions about the research aspect of your job. I can't remember which of you brought up that you could be involved in research, but can you talk a little bit more about that aspect and those opportunities of the role? Can we start with you, Nicole?
Yeah, so for radiological technology, there is a little bit less research than maybe going into radiation therapy or nuclear medicine in at least our day-to-day role. We can get involved kind of with our radiologists in working in kind of further advancements, but yeah, much less research kind of in our day-to-day. You can expect it's kind of the people who are interested in research and want to kind of seek it out, do it kind of more so outside of our profession to kind of gain further knowledge and to participate in further things. But as far as like our day-to-day role goes, I'd say very minimal research is involved with at least the radiological side of things.
Okay, thank you. Sarah.
So kind of similar to Nicole, we do have opportunities to become involved in studies for patients who are maybe on a drug trial, and so that we're able to scan these patients, set them up. Outside of that, it's not really us doing it, it's more us doing what we're told for the drug trial. But same thing, I think if you were interested in research, you'd go find it.
Hey, Haley.
Yeah, so I mentioned research in my talk. I feel like nuclear medicine has quite a bit of research, given the nature of our radioactive tracers. So they're kind of always designing new radioactive tracers. And because you come out of your program with the nuclear medicine and kind of those radiopharmacy skills, you would have like a really great skill set to kind of go into tracer development. And as well with the therapies, like kind of the same thing. There's a field of nuclear medicine that's really up and coming called theranostics, where they're basically taking like a diagnostic tracer and tagging a therapy to it so that you can have a more targeted treatment. And so there's a lot of research happening in that. And as a technologist, there's a lot of like clinical trials that get done and different things like that. So there's quite a bit. If you're interested in research, I would say nuclear medicine kind of has quite a bit on the go.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, and it just, I think, speaks to the number of different types of jobs and specializations that happen behind the scenes that the average person just has no idea about. So it's so nice to get this kind of backdoor peek into these professions. Adam, what about for you?
So in radiation therapy, I mean, I'll speak maybe a little bit broadly at first. I mean, all of the medical radiation technology professions have embedded in their actual competency profile core curriculum on research that regardless of which discipline you get involved in, you'll at least get initial training on critical appraisal and research techniques and things like that. And then really the opportunities are only limited by your imagination and your tenacity. So in radiation therapy, you know, sometimes we're involved in research just at collecting data for someone else's research. Sometimes we're involved in large international clinical trials and administering a new type of treatment. And sometimes we're doing our own little pet project research. Quite often where you would be working as a radiation therapist, you have access to clinical experts who have research experience, and they're usually more often than not willing to take a learner and provide some guidance and structure. And we really are sort of interestingly positioned to do not only quantitative or what some people would consider to be like scientific research, but I would challenge you or encourage you to challenge your ideas of what that is, because a lot of research coming out of cancer care and radiation therapy is also qualitative research. And we measure a lot with survivorship and emotional resiliency and things like that. So there's a really, you know, if you're not a periodic table, significant figures type of person, there's a great opportunity to be involved in research if it's something you're passionate about.
Yeah, thanks for making that distinction. It's really interesting also to understand just the broad range of type of research that you can get involved with. And depending on your personality and your own personal strengths, obviously, will likely pull you in one direction or another. We've had a few questions about, you know, being able to travel with the certification, move from province to province. Jennifer, this might be a question for you. Could you speak to that a little bit? How does that work in Canada?
Yeah, so for the most part, as long as you have passed the certification exam, that exam is recognized in every Canadian province. So you can go work in any province. If you're going to a province that is regulated or where you have to obtain a practice license, sometimes there's a few extra steps that you have to kind of show and prove in order to get that practice license. But even if you're traveling from one regulated province to the other, there's the ability to do that. So you can work in any province in Canada. Some may require you to do, like I said, a few extra steps, but there's definitely mobility with this profession as long as you have passed the certification exam.
Great to know. There's been some questions in the chat as well about getting these experiences that you've all talked about, these job shadowing opportunities, these, you know, opportunities to actually see the role in action, to understand if that's a good fit. I'm wondering, you know, if someone wants to raise their hand and can speak to that, maybe how you found your own opportunities or recommendations you have for the future MRTs in the audience.
Can I go first this time? Little point for any prospective applicants to programs, volunteering in a hospital looks great on getting in and is an opportunity for you to see what it is like to be in a busy environment with sick people and healthy people and people who are distressed and panicked and stressed out or celebrating the new birth of a baby or everything in between. And it's a really great opportunity to learn where these various departments are in your local hospital and reach out and say, you know, hey, I would love to talk to someone about coming and spending a couple of hours, or is there someone that I could talk to while they're on their coffee break and learn more about what they do here in this hospital. So I know we're all still emerging from the pandemic, but hospitals in Canada, to my knowledge, are starting to allow volunteers and learners who aren't necessarily registered in an actual training program to start coming back in and making connections. So I think that's a great way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, great tips and pieces of advice. And yeah, it is wonderful to see those opportunities opening back up again. It's hard to believe, but our hour is over already. And that's all the time we have for today. I would like to thank once again, Nicole, Sarah, Haley, and Adam for sharing your expertise with us today. Thank you also to Jennifer and to CAMRT for hosting the session. And thank you to all the participants who joined today and your great questions. We hope you found some value in the presentation. And I know we didn't get to all the questions, but hopefully you have some ideas about where you can search out and get further information, including CAMRT. That's all for today, folks. Take care, and we wish you all the best in your career search. Bye for now.